So this is the companion video to the actual Beech 18 flight that I did earlier today. And I'm going to try to do the exact same thing in this video so that we've got an actual D18S Beech 18 flying directly with a Beech 18 D18S in Xplane. I'm going to try to explain some of the things that an actual pilot will have problems with flying the simulator. I will make a couple notes. I have tried multiple joysticks. I have tried a full setup cockpit with the with everything from rudder pedals to throttle quadrants and everything else. I've got a gaming PC that I had built special for Xplane. I've tried MacBook Pros. I've tried a MacBook. I've tried the Mac Pro. I've tried, and the point is Linux, Mac, and Windows, they all fly exactly the same. So everything that I'm talking about in this video is the same across all platforms. Also, it's definitely an issue within the Xplane itself. So one of the things that I did earlier today is I'm in the settings section, joystick, and down here at the bottom there's a control sensitivity. I started playing around with this earlier, and I've about concluded that having both of these things over to 100% I'm sorry, I think that is where I had it. I may have to play with this in a second. I can't remember if I had this one because I was playing with a different computer earlier. I may have had this all the way to 0 and then this all the way to 100, but it seems like this is where I had it. So I moved everything over to 100%, and we'll try this and see how it goes. But it seemed like it flew a little better than otherwise. Now, to be clear, most of the problems, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Most of the problems that I'm having are not specifically related to flying the airplane. It's more of a trim problem. I don't know if the problem is due to Xplane not handling momentums and wind pressure correctly. I don't really know what is causing the problem. I'm just hoping that someone at Xplane will watch this video compared to the real airplane, and we can hopefully figure out how to set things properly to get them to react a little bit better. So as soon as this gets started, I'm going to go ahead and take off. If you haven't watched it already, there is a video. I'll put it in the link to this video down in the description, and I'll also do the same thing in the other video to kind of point to the different parts that are the two videos, the live airplane and then this one. So we're going to go ahead and do this quickly. I'm going to start everything up. I want to go ahead. Let's go ahead back over here to airplane real quick, and let's change everything over to just like it was today. We'll make it earlier in the day, and we will apply that so that it's clear, nice and clear day. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and release the brakes. I'm going to get up here where I can actually see, and we're just going to go ahead and take off. So I'm going to go ahead. Now, you'll notice that as I'm turning the rudder left and right, so I'm barely moving on the runway, but as you notice, if I make a really drastic turn in the rudder, it immediately goes in that direction. And in a real airplane, and this is part of the whole problem, but in a real airplane, you have momentum and you have the wheels dragging on the pavement, and there just is nothing you can do to get an airplane to walk back and forth like this. And even if you push the rudder completely down on the floor, in fact, in truth, a Beech 18, you're really kind of taxiing with the brakes because you're not really going fast enough for the rudder pedals to do you any good. So this whole exercise is totally unrealistic. But in any case, I'm going to try to get this thing going here, try to get it to quit walking back and forth, which is kind of tough at times. So here we go. Come on. There we go. So get up to speed. Up. Gears up. And we're just going to climb out. So the trim right off the bat is off, so I'm gonna get me some back trim so that we can get this thing to climb out of here. And now at this point, I'm just gonna kind of look down a little bit so we can kind of keep all of our instruments in the screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna pull it back to about 30 inches or so, 27 inches. And then I'm going to pull both props back to 2000 RPM. And we're just gonna climb up here to, I think I climbed up to about 2,000 feet is where we were when we were doing all of our tests today. So I'm gonna try to set everything exactly the same. I had the manifold pressure set to about 25, 27 inches, somewhere around in there. And then the props were set at 1900. So we're about in this configuration. And so the first thing that we did is we trimmed everything up. Well, right now we're in a right-hand turn, so this is the way that you trim an airplane. The first thing is I'm going to get it level, and then I'm going to let go of the stick, and I see immediately that it starts turning to the right. So I'm going to get a little bit of left aileron trim. I just clicked it twice. And then I'm going to put it back in the middle, and then I'm going to let go of the stick, and I'm going to see where it goes again. And I'm still going to the right just a little bit. So I'm going to get one more tick on the trim and fix that problem. Now I'm going to do the same thing on my climb. So I don't really care about my altitude. I'm just trying to get everything trimmed up. So at this point, I want to stop it from climbing. So we're going to get the climb under control. And then as soon as we do, we're going to let go. We see that it's climbing. And so at this point, I'm going to get nose down on the trim. So, and again, I'm just going to do this until I get it to halfway stay level. So we're going to get it out of the climb. We're going to watch what it does. And then as you can see, it's still climbing. So I'm going to trim it a little bit more. Still climbing, so trim it a little bit more, kind of push it down, get it in the level, and then we're gonna see what it does. And so right now we're still turning to the right just a little bit, which I'm gonna go ahead and get another couple of ticks to the left on the aileron trim, and we're still climbing. So I'm gonna continue to work with this, and the reason I'm doing this is I want to kind of show a few examples of what we did in the Beech 18. So right now we'll call this fairly trimmed. It's about as good as I can do in Xplane. And so right now what I want to do is, if you notice earlier today when I was doing this, I was going too fast, and we're going too fast now to put the flaps down. We need to be about 120 miles an hour. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull the manifold. So we have the airplane trimmed, but we're going to go ahead and pull the manifold back to about 15 inches is about where we ended up earlier. Okay, so we're kind of losing altitude, so I need to get it back up here. All right, and that was expected to lose altitude when I pulled it back like that. So now what we got to do is we've got to trim it back a little bit because we need it to hold altitude. And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it to slow down. So I pulled it back to 17 inches or so because I need it to kind of get trimmed out here and get everything level. So at this point we're fairly trimmed. We're still not trimmed. It's losing 1,000 foot a minute, even though a second ago it was sitting there okay. So we gotta get it trimmed up, or this experiment is not going to work. So I'm going to push it down, let go, and it's descending again. So we're going to trim it back some more, and we're going to get rid of the descent, try to get it to sit here fairly comfortably. So we're climbing again, but not, so we're fairly close to what we want. So now What we're going to do is we are only going to put one notch, about 15 degrees of flaps down. We've got everything fairly trimmed, although the thing is now making left-hand turns instead of right-hand turns. And I mean, some of that is expected when you change the prop and manifold and stuff. Other things change. At different speeds, things change. So it's a constant battle with everything, just not nearly like this. So we got everything trimmed up, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one notch of flaps down. So I'm going to hit it right now. One notch of flaps has gone down, and I want you to watch what the airplane does in Xplane, and then you can watch the video of the real airplane to see what it does. So as you can see, we just went into a 2,000 foot ascent almost immediately until the airplane is about to stall, at which point it then turns around and starts a 1,500 foot descent. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull it back where we had it, and I'm going to add up to about 2,000 or 20 inches, which is about what I did in the real airplane. Now you'll notice in the real airplane, when we did this maneuver, we did not touch the trim, so we didn't have to do anything at all. You'll notice right now that all of a sudden I have gotten into this habit of this bad left-hand turn, which is, you know, no reason for it whatsoever, because both RPMs are the same, the manifolds are the same. There's no reason why anything would have changed to make us start doing that. And now we're in a right-hand turn with just one click of trim to the left. I mean to the right. So now I've done one click back to the left. And now for some reason it's slowly still going into a right-hand turn. So 2 clicks back to the left. So now I'm more to the left than what we were earlier, but we're still going in a right-hand turn instead of a left-hand turn. And we're climbing. So we got a 500 foot per minute climb at 20 inches, and I'm not sure why. So notice my left RPM went down a little bit, so get it back up. So we're still in a right-hand turn, so we're going to try to get that back under control. And we're still climbing. So without touching the trim in the airplane, nothing happened. It pretty much stayed where it was and stayed pretty consistent. We added 20 inches and it continued to fly along without losing any altitude. In the Xplane, I still cannot get it to quit making a right-hand turn. I've now gone 10 clicks farther to the left than I was earlier, and it's still making a right-hand turn. And this is, you know, like I've said in other videos, this is the thing that is driving me crazy about the simulator. It is, you know, you can't shoot an approach by hand if the airplane is constantly changing the parameters on you, and that's what this thing is doing. So we're in a 500 foot, 400 foot climb at 20 inches, and now look, my RPM gauge has just separated completely, and I haven't touched a single thing. So I don't know what is going on with this. So now I've pushed it back over there, and now the thing is going to start a massive right-hand turn again. This is maddening. God, I wish that we could figure out how to get this to do right. Okay, so we'll say that everything is okay. We finally got everything trimmed back up so that it's halfway flying, except now it's turning to the left. Wow. And anyway, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick the flaps back up. So we're going to pick the flaps up. And now you'll have to go back and watch the real airplane to see what the real airplane actually did when I picked the flaps back up. But it was not this. So we have gone into a 2,000 foot per minute dive just from picking the flaps up. And now we're going to, without touching it, we're now going to go to a 2,000 foot climb just because we picked the flaps up. So we haven't changed a single thing on this airplane, and yet we can't get it to quit turning. It just will not stop turning one direction or the other. And doing tiny little things like putting a notch of flaps down or putting the gear down cause the airplane to just go into these massive ascent and descents. And, you know, I hope that, you know, somebody can watch the actual airplane flying, and hopefully it's just a setting in here that we can tweak to get this to work. The settings that I have on the joystick do allow the airplane to be smoother as far as, you know, turning in and out of turns, and, you know, I don't have that wishy-washy immediate turn that we used to have. So we're much better on flying the airplane. In fact, flying the airplane, I can deal with some of the, you know, the very high sensitivity that we have on moving the joystick. I can deal with that. But what I cannot deal with as far as hand flying the airplane so that I can shoot some approaches, I can't deal with the fact that I absolutely can't get this thing to trim. And then when I get to the final approach fix, at the point that I put the flaps down, which is where you do that, you usually drop the gear and get a notch of flaps, but at least drop the gear. But when I drop the gear on the real airplane at the final approach fix, I'm just going to start nicely with everything else the same. It'll just start descending down the glide slope at almost the rate that you need to be descending down the glide slope. But in the simulator, when I drop the gear, I get a, you know, either a climb or a descent. In fact, let's see what we get. So I'm going to drop the gear right now. At least I think the gear dropped. Let's see. I have the gear on my, I don't know where the gear switch is on here. I'm still in this crazy, maddening left-hand turn or right-hand turn. Where is the gear switch on here? Flaps. Is that it right there? I can't really, it looks like, I mean, that's normally the carb heat, but the gear's usually down here. I don't really know if my gear's down or not. I don't see the gear light, and I don't see the handle. Ice, jam, beacon, boom, 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 landing. I'm assuming that's landing lights. Oh, there we go. So it is down. So there's my green light. So we are down, and that wasn't bad. I mean, that we're not losing the amount of altitude that you really would without changing anything and putting the gear down, but at least it's not drastic like it is when you put the flaps down. So, you know, I'm actually pleasantly surprised about the gear, because that's not bad. It's not exactly what happens, but it is a lot better than what happens when you put the flaps down. So I'm going to pick the gear back up. So the only thing to note about the gear is that when I put the gear down and put the gear up, there's no changes in the airplane the way it's flying. It's you know, I get a little bit of a climb here, which is normal, but it's like it really can't tell whether I put the gear up or down. And it's also worth noting that I've not changed the manifold pressure, I haven't changed the RPM, and I haven't changed the trim. And yet now we're in a 1,000-foot ascent. I mean, it just I guess another aspect of this that's kind of drives you crazy is that I can get this airplane perfectly trimmed up, make a turn, level out, and all of a sudden the trim is completely out of whack again. Or I can put the flaps down, get it all trimmed up, pick the flaps up, and everything, well, I mean, that would change a little bit, but it changes a massive amount. And so I end up having to sit here and spend 10 minutes trying to get everything trimmed back up again. So hopefully somebody can watch this and tell me what to do to get this thing flying a little bit better with the trim.